people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Está en serio problema. Tarde la noche, Stephanie Piñeiro.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. A developing story involving the now defunct promotional outfit Probellum, a fighter that goes by the name Eduardo Rocky Hernandez.
Posted this to his social media and it reads, "My name is Eduardo Rocky Hernandez. This video, it's so y'all know the real reason why I'm not fighting.
I signed with the promotional company Probellum in September of 2021. I was offered 3 fights per year. My first fight took place on December 16th of 2021. I won by way of knockout in the second round. After that win, they didn't offer me nothing. So my manager, Hernandez, got me an opportunity as a B-side with Matchroom to challenge their WBC Silver International Champion, whom I happened to stop in the first round on June 10th, 2022. Matchroom gave us another opportunity now to defend my new title on September 3rd of 2022, and I also won that fight by stoppage in the 5th round. At that point, Probellum started having legal issues due to organized crime accusations. My team started asking them for a plan due to the legal problem.
And we've talked about that many times here on the channel.
That even though no formal connection has been made between the now defunct Probellum and Daniel Kinahan, widespread speculation suggests that he is involved.
To some degree is that Probellum was just MTK Global by another name.
Rocky Hernandez, super featherweight that sports a professional record of 33 wins with just 1 loss,
30 knockouts, having only ever been knocked out once in 34 professional bouts.
Rocky continued, Matchroom offered me to fight in December of 2022, but Probellum denied me the opportunity. Matchroom reached out again for a February showdown, and once again, Probellum denies me the opportunity. So Matchroom comes to offer me what would be my career highest pay of $75,000 to fight on April 8th in Texas, and once again, Probellum does everything in their power to deny me of the opportunity once again. Then in February, they notify me and my team that my contract with Probellum has been assigned without my knowledge nor authorization to a company called Disrupt. Who is Disrupt? Ever since they appeared in the picture, they haven't done not one fight nor one show. I also see some of the fighters that used to be with Probellum,
and there are many,
getting released, such as Badu Jack, Sonny Edwards, Regis Prograis, Darius Fulgham, among many other fighters. So my team reached out once again and offered to buy me out of my contract with more money than they ever spent.
And it is true that many of the fighters that Probellum signed at the start, they've gone their separate ways. They're doing their own thing. Estelle Mosley,
I think she's had 2 separate fights, not under the Probellum banner. We know that Regis Prograis very recently announced he's a network and promotional free agent. Sonny Edwards signed to Matchroom.
Badu Jack signed to Skills Challenge.
A lot of the fighters that Probellum signed at the start, they ended up going their separate ways and fighting under other promotional banners, so why can't Rocky?
What are you doing to Rocco?
Rocky Hernandez continued. Then we offered them more money and a percentage of my next fight, and they declined. Not only that, but they don't offer me fights. What is the problem? What have I ever done to them? I won every fight by KO ever since signing with them. I've been a good kid and a good professional, always made weight. I don't know, what did I ever do to them? I have now 2 babies, and I'm just trying to make an honest living and provide for my family. I ask you guys to share this video so people know. I'm ranked in every organization. I'm #1 in the WBC and still can't fight. These people have kidnapped my career. Who is behind Probellum and Disrupt? Does the company really exist? There are so many questions with no answer. So all I ask from you is your help to help me share this. I put all this in the hands of God and my attorneys and hope to get all this resolved as soon as possible. I'm sharing this so young fighters don't make the same mistake I made. Thank you all from Rocky Hernandez, #1 ranked in the WBC and 9 months of inactivity. And there's no plan for me to fight anytime soon. We've talked about how Probellum has gone through a rebrand. They're now called Disrupt Boxing, but not without some losses. You know, Sonny Edwards, Badu Jack, Estelle Mosley, Dina Dorsland, Regis Prograis, a good number of the fighters that Probellum harvested upon their inception, they've scattered. And what was supposed to be the president of Probellum, the fledgling promotional company, Richard Schaefer, even Richard Schaefer has jumped ship. It was in March of this year, earlier this year, that it was announced Richard Schaefer was named the president of Anthem Sports Group and will continue to promote Nonito Donaire and Eman Castellanos. But as far as his future with Probellum and anything involving Probellum, I mean, what kind of situation are we looking at when the president of the company is allowed to leave and several other fighters are allowed to leave, but Rocky Hernandez isn't? All we heard back in March is that Richard Schaefer left behind most of what he brought to Probellum, whose remaining assets were sold to upstart company Disrupt Boxing Promotions, which is what Rocky Hernandez is talking about. Without his say and without his authorization, he was brought over to Disrupt Boxing, which is really just Probellum by another name. But if all those other fighters were allowed to leave Probellum, why can't Rocky? It's a problem. Dick Schaefer's based out of Toronto now with Anthem. Sonny Edwards is with Matchroom. Estelle Mosley's doing her own thing in France. Regis Prograis very recently announced his free agency, yet Rocky Hernandez can't leave? Why not? To my knowledge, Disrupt Boxing, quote-unquote Disrupt Boxing, they haven't actually started staging shows of their own, doing their own promotions. So for what reason do they even have a contract with this guy? What are they using him for? What do they plan to use him for? And who's behind Disrupt Boxing? Because it's not Richard Schaefer. Oh, he left. Just outside looking in, you have to ask yourself, if Disrupt Boxing isn't actually doing their own shows, then for what reason would they want to keep Rocky Hernandez under contract? And it's likely so that they can loan him out to major promotional outfits that do have a broadcast partner, because they don't. Major outfits like Matchroom, because you heard what Rocky said. He has fought in the last 12 months, but it was under Matchroom. Disrupt Boxing, which is just Probellum by another name, they don't have a broadcast partner, so they don't have broadcast money, network money, to do their own shows and air them on some platform. They don't. So then you ask yourself, what do they want with Rocky Hernandez? And they likely want to loan him out to other promotional outfits that might want to use him, and they'll deduct a fee, whilst limiting his autonomy and his control over his own career. They're willing to loan him out, but they won't let him leave. Won't even let him buy out his own contract. It's a curious situation, to say the least, because I heard that Probellum had gone through a rebrand and they were now going to be called Disrupt Boxing moving forward, though given the number of boxers that already left, I thought they'd never get off the ground. Apparently they're still there, holding Rocky Hernandez's career for ransom. Hopefully through some means, Rocky Hernandez will be able to sever ties to Disrupt Boxing and take control of his career. We'll keep you posted. Men's super middleweight news. Jose Benavidez Sr., the father of David Benavidez, is once again name-dropping and bumping his gums again, saying Benavidez has no problem with a Beterbiev showdown. He's a fucking animal, but David is ready. No, he isn't. More empty promises from the David Benavidez team that in all likelihood are going to stay on PBC Island. Outside of his ambitions to face Canelo Alvarez, Benavidez has flirted with the idea of moving up in weight. Amongst the long list of options he would have at his disposal, a showdown against current unified light heavyweight champion Artur Beterbiev would be an interesting one, although Benavidez Sr. acknowledges that the Russian star is one of the deadliest punchers around. He points to the driver's license of the unified champion and circles his date of birth. What about it? You're not going to fight him? If he did. If that fight by some chance were next, in a vacuum, hypothetical scenario, I would pick Artur Beterbiev to destroy David Benavidez. David, who didn't have the punching power to dispatch Caleb Plant, who was so clearly exhausted in the last 5 rounds of their fight. Ask yourself a question. What? Would that same Caleb Plant be able to go the distance with Artur Beterbiev? No fucking way. He's a fucking animal, said Benavidez Sr. to BoxingScene.com, but you gotta understand, he's almost 40 years old, bro. While he isn't getting any younger at the age of 38, Beterbiev hasn't shown any signs of slowing down. The exact same confidence shared by Team Benavidez was also shared by Anthony Yarde, with the hulking Brit firmly believing that he had what it took to usurp Beterbiev. The two clashed in the center of the ring on January 28th earlier this year, though he enjoyed moments of success. Yard's normally granite chin eventually cracked under pressure, and so would David Benavidez.
He's too weak.
Too basic. You're talking about a guy who was chasing around Caleb Plant for the final 5 rounds of their fight. A Caleb Plant that really isn't fighting back. A Caleb Plant that is exhausted and is nowhere near the puncher that Artur Beterbiev is. And opposite the ring Caleb Plant, David Benavidez couldn't drop the guy, couldn't stop the guy. But you think he's going to do anything to Artur?
The most he can hope to do is hurt Artur's knuckles with his face.
Benavidez Sr. claims that he is more than willing to throw him into the line of fire. He's a dangerous fighter, but David is ready to take this challenge and make history at both weights.
Is this the same Jose Benavidez Sr. that not that long ago specified they entered a 3-fight deal with the PBC?
A deal that entails a potential Charlo fight, a potential Andrade fight, and a potential Morrell fight. Is this the same Jose Benavidez?
One and the same. He's happy to name drop other fighters for fights he doesn't expect to happen, like the Canelo Alvarez fight.
Remember, Artur Beterbiev fights on the top-ranked side of things. David is over there at the PBC. How do you propose you make a fight?
How do you propose you make that fight happen when you're not willing to cross the street for Canelo, but you're going to cross the street for Artur?
Yes, sir. So, does that mean you'd be willing to fight on the zone if that's what Canelo wanted?
No. I believe that his contract expired on the next fight.
Did you hear that? If push came to shove, and David had to go to DAZN for a Canelo Alvarez fight, Samson Lukowicz would be unwilling to send him. He'd be unwilling to send him to DAZN for a Canelo fight. But you think they want to have anything to do with Artur?
Here's this bridge I want to sell you.
This isn't like when Shakur Stevenson calls out a Vasyl Lomachenko or a Devin Haney. That's not a baseless call-out. When a Shakur Stevenson calls those guys out, it's because he genuinely wants a fight. Whereas what Jose Benavidez is doing is promoting his son by way of name association with no real intention of pursuing any of these fights.
He's clout chasing.
Even though there's a growing faction of bozos that are eating this stuff up. If you want my opinion, and you're here, so I'll assume that you do. David Benavidez would get eaten alive by today's Artur Beterbiev, even if he is 38 years old, because Artur Beterbiev
and David Benavidez are both mid-range to inside pressure fighters, but Artur, he's better with that base style than David.
He's a level or two above David Benavidez with that same base style. He's got some of the ingredients that David Benavidez is missing, along with more destructive power, though it doesn't all just boil down to power. Some bit of it is actually applied sciences in the sweet science implementation, where David Benavidez's fans have to make excuses for him because Caleb Plant kept holding.
They gotta make excuses because David Benavidez couldn't knock that guy out.
Canelo knocked that guy out, and Canelo's a lot smaller than David Benavidez. David Benavidez is about, 6'2", approximately 200 pounds on the night.
They make excuses for this guy.
They say the reason he couldn't knock out Caleb Plant is because Caleb Plant kept holding. Do you think that same Caleb Plant would have been able to go the distance with Artur Beterbiev?
Are you kidding me?
Caleb Plant couldn't go the distance with a 5'7", short and stumpy Canelo Alvarez, but he was able to go the distance with 6'2", 200 pounds on the night, David Benavidez.
Why?
Because David is too basic. All they keep telling you is that Caleb was holding, but why was he able to hold when he was so clearly exhausted for the last 5 rounds of the fight? Why couldn't he finish him? And it's because David is basic.
He's a pressure fighter like Artur Beterbiev is a pressure fighter, but he's a more basic, more crude.
Caleb Plant's constant smothering tactics wouldn't have gone over with Artur Beterbiev the way they did with David, because Artur's got a very short double and triple jab that he uses as a key to close the distance on his opponents.
Caleb Plant would have went to hold Artur and walked right into a goddamn jab.
Jab in a straight or a jab in an uppercut, where Artur Beterbiev, quite characteristically, uses his lead hand in a variety of ways to close the distance on his opponents. David is a lot more basic, not as methodical. He comes forward in a high guard.
He telegraphs his punches. He tries for these wide sweeping hooks, these big shots that the other guy sees coming.
Shots he can either get out of the way of or absorb on the arms and gloves because David's too basic to disguise them, the way Artur Beterbiev would. In terms of power, David isn't on Artur's level.
Artur Beterbiev would chew David Benavidez up and spit him out. Not that it matters, because that fight isn't going to happen anyway. And Team Benavidez knows it. They're just clout chasing.
Just name-dropping fighters ain't got no intention of fighting so that the journos got something to write about and they have a reason to keep their name out there. That's all it is.
If you're still believing these fucking people, it's gotta be because you're some kind of idiot.
It's gotta be. Or you like being lied to.
Maybe that's it.
I remember it was in March of this year that David Benavidez said he didn't rule out the possibility of one day moving to cruiserweight, though we must be talking about many years from now, many years down the line, given the amount of time it's taking for him to move up to light heavyweight, let alone cruiserweight.
Just 25 pounds north of light heavyweight.
You got a guy in David Benavidez that stands in at about 6'2", likely rehydrates to about at or around 200 pounds on the night. Why is a guy like that cutting that much weight to make super middle?
Because he can't hack it at light heavy, and they know it.
David Benavidez would not be anywhere near as physically imposing as a light heavyweight as he might be as a super middleweight. David Benavidez, who said, so right now, I definitely want to go up to 175, said Benavidez to Fight Hub TV during a recent interview. I know I can win the belt at 175.
Win it from who? You ain't winning no belts from Artur, and you ain't winning no belts from Dimitri either.
David Benavidez at light heavyweight would look a lot like Zurdo Ramirez. Those two guys are cut from the same cookie cutter. I will admit that David is somewhat faster and sharper than Zurdo, though in terms of skill, they're both at or around the same place.
In terms of power, too.
The biggest advantage that both David and Zurdo have had as super middleweights is that they are tall super middleweights, very generous physical dimensions for a 168-pound fighter. That's the biggest advantage they both have.
Both had. Zurdo campaigns as a light heavyweight, and you see what happened to him in his last fight.
Whilst David Benavidez still wades in the kiddie pool at 168, David, who said, I think it's definitely very possible, but right now, my sights are on 168. I want to be unified world champion at 168, go up to 175, and I think it could definitely be a possibility. Cruiserweight.
He's talking about light heavy, he's talking about cruiser. All the while, his team signed a 3-fight deal that entails fighting more super middleweights.
And some middleweights, don't forget, Jermall Charlo was mentioned as being a part of that deal.
These guys love to name drop everybody, name drop entire weight classes, but all the while, you see what they're doing. And some guys, they like being lied to.
I don't know, maybe by the time Artur is 40 or 41, maybe 42, maybe then David Benavidez will feel ready to move up in weight. But what the near and immediate future holds for him are more fights with more super middleweights.
More name dropping.
No other way to put it. When David Benavidez blew the weight in 2020, the WBC offered him a #1 rank at light heavyweight that would have lined him up for an Artur Beterbiev fight. And he chose to reject that, chose to stay at super middleweight.
Yeah.
2-3 years later,
What has he got to show for it?
reheating Canelo Alvarez's dinner from late 2021.
I'm just giving it to you straight. It's the only way I know how to give it to you.
Team Benavidez are full of shit.
If you believe him, it's only a testament to how stupid you are.